Hello and welcome back to DriveDriverDriven. My name is Humble, and as promised last time around, this time I wanted to cover what it takes to register a kit car in California, and specifically this is for either a car that you have built or perhaps a kit car that was built out of state. But once you import it into California, it will also need to go through this process. When you build a kit car in California, you can do the specialty built vehicle kind of program thing that we have here. And basically what that entails is, because the car you're building won't necessarily adhere to a smog law of a given year or of a given standard. It only needs to meet minimum requirements, and there are 500 cars per year that can kind of get one of these certificates. Specifically, that was Assembly Bill SB100 from way back when. But it's commonly referred to as just an SB100. That's the process that I went through to get the Ultima registered, but I want to also give not really a few more tips, but things that you should be cautious about or be wary of if you want to register your car or kit car in California, or bring a kit car from out of state into California. And these are things that you should watch for, really. First off is you want to make sure that the car you've built or are building meets the minimum requirements by law. You can find a set of guidelines that's set forth by, I think it's the CHP, California Highway Patrol, or somebody, I'm not sure. I had found these PDFs a while ago, and the specific laws, but I've searched and I cannot find them again. Maybe if somebody else has come across that, they can put the link down below in the comments. But what I had found were specifics, like for cars, or I should say for any vehicle, your headlights cannot be lower than 20 inches from the surface of the road, and they cannot be higher than 36 inches from the road. So like, you know, that covers if you've got a lowrider or a low sports car like the Ultima, or a big monster truck looking thing, or a lifted truck, what have you. It covers all those bases. The car has to have tail lights, it has to have turn signals, it has to have at least 2 headlights if it's a car. If you have to have a windshield or a windscreen, and that windscreen has to have a swept area of a given percentage by at least 1 windshield wiper. And this is what seems to catch up a lot of people, especially folks who do like an Exocet or a Lotus 7, or any of these smaller cars, or even like a rat rod, which depending on how you put it together could classify as an SB100 build. They think that you can get away with not having a windshield, or with having a windshield but having no wipers, because you never plan to drive it in inclement weather or something. But the law states you have to have these things. Before anyone chimes in, is like, oh well, I have this buddy, or I was able to get my car through and get it inspected and it passed just fine, and I didn't have windshield, or I didn't have wipers, or I just had a small windscreen or something like that. The letter of the law states it has to have a windshield, and that I think it's something like 75 or 80% of the windshield has to be covered by the swept area of the windshield wiper. Now, just because you got through your inspection and you sailed right through, doesn't mean that will work for everybody. When I'll come to this later, but the guy who's going to be doing your inspection may not necessarily be the one to hand down the final judgment. They might turn you away on site, or the guy could just not care, send your pictures up to Sacramento, and then they're going to be the ones to turn you away. And then you're out some inspection fees and you've got some additional work to do. What my goal here is to make sure you have all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and when you take a finished or nearly finished car for inspection, that you're not going to have any troubles. That's what I had done. I had taken a completely fully assembled and ready to drive car to my inspection, and I was able to pass flawlessly with no hiccups, no issues, and as fast of an in and out time as anyone I've talked to had ever had. And I think a lot of that just boils down to preparedness. So I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way first, and I'm going to assume for the rest of this process that you have a complete or nearly complete, like a 95 or 98% built car that you're taking in for this process. So you've got your car, you put it together, you're done, you're to the point of you're ready to drive it around, and you have your paperwork from the factory. You have you want to get all of your paperwork together, and by paperwork I mean you need to have a statement of origin or a bill of origin or something like that that basically represents your kit was built by Westfield or Ultima or whomever. Like it's just a paper that says we produced this kit and we sold it to this dude, and it's just giving your kit a source. It came from somewhere. Now, if you didn't buy your kit, if it's a truly home-built car, and there are a few builders that I have followed who've done this, you will have to create your own. Basically, you just make a statement that says, I built this, I put these source materials together, and in that case, you need to provide a bill of sale or a receipt for the materials it took to build your car. And I'm talking raw materials like tubing or metal plates or aluminum panels, and where you pick them up from, the metal store or whatever. You want to have those receipts so you have a paper trail for the source of your car. Other things you want to have is you want to have a receipt for the engine you installed and a receipt for the transmission you installed. It doesn't matter if they're used or new, but you do need to provide a paper trail, a source for that engine and transmission. Ideally, what you're doing here is you're just proving that it wasn't stolen, that if it was sourced from a donor car, they may ask for that VIN number. If it's a brand new crate engine like I got, or a brand new Porsche transaxle like I got, again, they're going to ask for that source paperwork. So things like receipts or source of origin or some proof that you got that part from, where you got it. So you have all your build receipt, and the thing is, you want to keep all of your receipts together. I know basically anyone who's had a kit car, or not even a kit car, anyone who's had a project car, you hate putting receipts together. You hate knowing what it really cost, but them's the breaks. You got to have all your receipts, or at least all the receipts for your biggest components. So chassis, body, engine, transmission, running gear, tires, brakes, wheels, whatever. All the most important parts, you want to get as many receipts together as you can and have them together, because you are going to need all these receipts a few times going forward. So when I say paperwork, that's what I'm referring to. is just being able to provide an origin for the parts you used for your build. The next thing you want to do is make a copy of everything you have. Run to Kinko's if you have a DIY, an all-in-one printer or something like that at home. Copy every piece of paper that you have, every receipt, the source of origin paperwork. It's just very important that you have a copy for yourself, because at different parts of the build, you may have to give up your receipts for one reason or another, or provide them to the DMV or to the Smog Ref or what have you. They need the originals or a copy of the receipts that you have. So what I'd done is I had made 2 copies right from the get-go, just so that I could provide those and leave those with whatever place needed them, and that seemed to work out really well. So you have your paperwork, you've copied it, you have everything together. Now what you want to do is we're going to make our first trip to the DMV. When you go to the DMV, and this in particular, this is for California. Other states will have similar but varying processes, but in California, this is how it rolls. So you're going to the DMV in California. You're going to need the forms to register a new car or a purchased car. There may be a specific paper for like a kit car or a built car, but you want to make sure you have that ahead of time and build it. If I can figure out what those document numbers are, I'll put them in the link description for everything required. But there should be, I think there's a statement of origin and a new car registration paperwork that you have to fill out. But you want those 2 papers plus all your origin paperwork. And when you go up to the counter, they are going to do your kind of first initial tax assessment. You are going to ask at that time for an SB100 number. And if they don't know what that is, you want to ask for SPCNS, which is like a specialty constructed vehicle. And you want to make sure you tell the teller or DMV representative that you're registering a kit car or a specialty built car. And if they're unfamiliar, there's typically at least one person there in the office who is familiar, and you might have to wait a little bit longer for additional help. But what you want to get before you leave this very first visit is an SB100 number or an SPCNS number, and they'll be able to give you that number at this visit. And why that's important is that number is part of your smog exemption process. And basically that number is your place in line for one of 500 exemptions that the DMV can give out in any year. So each year they have 500 of these spots, and you want to make sure that you get one of them. Now, in years past, you would have to duke it out the first day in January, and you might get number 300 or 400 and something. But recently, over the past 5 years or so, there's been a lot of problems that were solved that were causing these shortages. And so now I think when I registered my car in the DMV, the Ultima was given like number 174 or 176 or something like that. So there was plenty of slots available in December. So again, the earlier you go, the better off you are. But I don't think there's quite the crunch for these SB100 numbers that there once was. So you'll have to pay for that initial tax assessment. You'll have your SB100 number in hand, and then they should also give you a move permit, a temporary move permit. Now I was told that had recently changed. Previously, they would give you a 30-day temporary move permit, but when I went, I was given a 24-hour move permit, and basically, it's a 24-hour window which you can drive your car around the street. Now, you do want to make sure you have insurance or temporary insurance, so you're not driving around without insurance. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. But once you have that at least 1 day or 30-day move permit, then we can move on, and your SB100 number, I should say, then we can move on to step 2 for this part of the process. Once you have your temporary move permit and you've started kind of DMV process, the next thing that you'll want to do is you're going to have to go and do a brake and lamp inspection. And again, this is in California. And what they're going to do is they're going to make sure that your headlights turn on and are pointed in the right direction. They're going to make sure your brake lights work, your turn signals work, your reverse lights work. So ideally, verify that all that stuff works before you go. That way, it's just an in and out procedure. Again, when I went, I was fully prepared. All of my lights worked as advertised: reverse, brake, turn signals, idle lights, etc. Although we did take a couple more minutes to adjust and aim my headlights accordingly. Now, after the fact, I found out that they had pointed my headlights basically skyward, and that had to do with the measuring tool they were using was not really meant for a car as low as mine, or with a setup quite like I had. So I would verify your headlights once it's done, maybe that following evening. But at any case, it was a quick in and out, and I was able to go back to the DMV that same day, and that's where you have to go next. Once you have proof that your brakes and lights work, you go back to the DMV, and then they're going to give you a longer move permit. Now, for me, my initial move permit was only 24 hours, and so the next permit that I got was a 30-day permit. Again, that was different from what I was told. I guess previously it used to be a 90-day, but now they're only giving out a 30-day permit. You can renew it if you need additional time, but this is, again, back to one of those things where you want to make sure you have a mostly completed car. That way you can get all of these inspections done, as quickly as possible, so you don't have to go and make, more trips back to the DMV. You're already going to have to go back there quite a bit. So in this case, I was able to go back same day after my brake and lamp inspection and get my temporary street permit. This is basically a paper plate now, is what you'll be issued as a temporary tag, so that you can drive around and do the rest of your inspections. And you're going to have a couple more. So after the brake and lamp inspection, and you now have your temp tags, and you can get a little farther out. The next step you need to do is, again, in California, you're going to need to do a VIN verification. What this is if your kit car came with a VIN number, you want to make sure that it is stamped on the chassis somewhere. A metal plate that's riveted is not good enough. It has to be stamped into the metal tube. If you were not issued a VIN with your chassis, then the CHP will issue one for you, and what they'll do is they'll give you the paperwork, send you off to have it stamped in your chassis, and then you're going to have to come back and prove that it was stamped in your chassis. They also may drill a couple holes and rivet a steel plate or an aluminum plate or something like that, with an assigned VIN, but they're still going to recommend that you stamp that VIN number in the chassis. So it can't be simply unbolted or marred or anything like that off. You're also going to want to bring all your paperwork again with you to the CHP or to the VIN inspection, because they are going to get down under the car and in the engine bay, and they're looking for the VIN number on the engine block. They're looking for, or a serial number. They're looking for a VIN or serial number on the transmission. They're going to ask you for that origin paperwork again to make sure it's not stolen. And it's going to be a fairly thorough check to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. For me, I was able to provide them with everything they needed. It was, since my car was new and nothing was sourced from a used car or a used chassis, I was able to get through pretty briskly. Once you're done with CHP, the next thing you're going to need to do is schedule a visit with a smog referee. So in the state of California, we do have smog laws. They require certain things on newer cars or used cars, like you have to have cats, etc. But for a kit car or a specialty constructed vehicle, there's only one real rule that applies, and that is you have to have a functioning positive crankcase ventilation system that vents to your intake. And you also have to have a closed block. So you can't have like valve cover vents or things like that vent to atmosphere. Those gases will need to be captured and then sent back into the intake. Again, I had prepped the Ultima to have a closed block. So actually, the engine that I built was a dry sump, and it had to be closed anyway. And then I took a breather can and was able to connect that to the intake also. So it more than met the minimum requirements, because I was also running cats. But I copied the system that you would find in a modern Corvette Z06, just to be doubly sure that I would meet those minimum smog requirements. Now, the Smog Ref is where the rules hit the road quite literally. Depending on who you get, they may go through your car with a ruler and measure the lights from the road. He's going to nitpick your engine bay and look for those closed systems and look for that PCV valve. He's going to make you open everything up, and he's going to take a whole ton of pictures. And again, he's going to ask you for all of your paperwork so he can scan it. And then this whole bundle of paperwork is going to be sent off to Sacramento. Again, here in California, it's sent off to the capital city for the main DMV, where your fate is in their hands. That's why it's, again, super, super important that you have a completed or nearly complete car that has that meets the legal requirements and all of the rules for the road. This is at the point where if you, as I mentioned before, if you didn't have a windshield or you didn't have a wiper that swept a specific area, they could just turn you away. He can refuse to submit your paperwork because he knows it might fail. Some guys are just really cool and they just don't care, and they'll look for the minimum requirements, like the PCV and whatever, and they'll just send the pictures on anyway. It really depends, one visit to the next, or one smog ref to the next, but it's better just not to chance it from my experience. Just go in there straight and true, have everything adjusted like it's supposed to, working like it's supposed to. I believe that he also double checked that my lights were working like they were supposed to. Even though I had done the brake and lamp inspection, like it's a very, at least in my case, it was a very thorough inspection. He didn't really leave any stone unturned. Now, because I did mine later in the year, I believe, or no, I did mine early in the year. Sorry, it was right around just after the holidays in January, and I was able to get an appointment very quickly, which again is not usually the case in California. And the visit went quickly. Got my paperwork submitted, and everything was sent up to Sacramento. And what I was told, I was warned that it could take up to a month to get an answer back, or as little as 2 weeks. But what ended up happening is within about 3 or 4 days, he gave me a call and said, come on back. So we scheduled another visit, and that's what's coming up next. After they get a call back from Sacramento, says your car's A-OK, and you get the DMV stamp of approval, the Smog Ref will call you and set up a follow-up appointment, and this is where your SB100 sticker is issued. It's a little kind of like, I think it's like 3x5 or 3x4 white sticker that they put on the chassis. Basically is proof that you built this thing, that it meets the requirements for the state of California to be considered a vehicle, and that's your ticket to a smog-free life from then on. And what they're going to do is you'll show up, he'll slap that sticker on the car in a place of your choice. But specifically, they're going to look for a part of the chassis that is not removable, that's fixed. And if you can, you don't want to have it in a place that's in direct sunlight, but still something you can get to if you need to for an inspection or whatever, because it will fade with time. Is really the warning I'm trying to get across is. So when you're going to car shows and you have all the doors and the hood and everything open, you want to make sure that it's just not getting beaten by the sun all the time, because it will fade. So just make sure that it's in a fairly protected area. Also, make sure that it's not somewhere that will get abraded or brushed or rubbed or anything like that, because the sticker itself is, I wouldn't say it's fragile, but it's a sticker. Like it will be torn up if you beat up on it too much. So, and that's your car's livelihood. I don't know the process on getting another one, and it's not something I want to figure out. But I would rather not have to go through that whole process again if I can help it. So once you get that sticker put back on the car, or I should say, once you get it put on the car for the first time. Now it's your last DMV visit, and this time around you're going to take the paperwork you got from the Smog Ref. You're going to take all your brake and lamp inspection, everything, all the inspection paperwork that you've received to date, on top of your original paperwork or whatever. You're going to take all of that back to the DMV. If you had waived your initial taxes or deferred your initial taxes until now, you're going to need to pay them. And what I mean by that is because you built the car, anything that you sourced from outside the state of California or didn't pay taxes on, you will have to pay taxes now during this visit. If you have not paid your, how do I put this? Let's say your car was $50,000 to make. During this visit, or maybe even at the first visit, you're going to have to pay state tax on that purchase, just like you would buy, like if you were buying a car or a piece of gum or a cell phone, whatever the hell. you have to pay that purchase tax. So you're going to have to pay the taxes on that $50,000. It doesn't matter if you built the car yourself. So like when I went to register my car, my tax bill was something like $14,000 and change dollars. Like, it was not insignificant. And I mentioned that in my total cost video, but it was a bit of a gut check having to pay an additional 14 grand taxes on top of everything that I had bought for the car. And that's because mostly I had sourced my kit. My kit came from the UK, so I had to pay those additional taxes. If you sourced your kit car in the States, your taxes will vary quite a bit less. And if you bought your kit in the state of California, those taxes should be quite a bit less. So it just depends on where all of your parts came from or where your kit came from, etc. So you're going to pay that tax burden. You're going to pay your registration, your final / first registration cost, and submit all your paperwork. And you're going to give that to the DMV. And this time, when you give your paperwork to the DMV, they are just going to take it. And that's theirs now. So that's why it's important to make copies of everything you have before going this last final time. I guess I should have mentioned that beforehand. So now when you submit your paperwork, they will just take it as a proof of your build, etc. And you'll pay your taxes, pay your registration, and you will finally be issued plates and tags for your kit car. And you have created and built a car that's legal to drive on the roads in the state of California with insurance. And you should be pretty damn proud of yourself at this point for having to jump through all of those hoops. It was quite a breath of fresh air to finally be through all of this paperwork and through all of this process in order to get the Blunicorn on the road registered and driving around. And from now on, you're going to have to answer that question every time you stop for gas or stop and park your car. Hey, is that thing street legal? And now you can say yes. So that's really it for the process. In a nutshell, it's get your paperwork together, go to the initial DMV visit, do your brake and lamp inspection, go back to the DMV and get your move permit, your temporary move permit, do your CHP inspection, do your Smog Ref inspection, go back to the DMV for your final registration, and that's it. Quick and easy. I know it sounds like it, but just the paperwork alone is pretty daunting, but it's well worth it to get on the road with your car. Now, a couple things that I didn't cover during this process that I think are worth covering and very important follow-ups is since you've built your car by hand, and even if you did a string alignment like I had done, one of your first stops now with your registered car is you should go and get a four-wheel alignment done. Just to make sure that all four wheels are pointed the right direction down the road, and to set up an initial alignment for the car, one that you can work from in the future. It'll make a world of difference, and it'll also, if you go to a higher end shop or like a race shop, and that's what I would highly recommend actually, they'll be able to adjust your suspension and make sure that your chassis is square, that the right side of the car is the same length as the left side of the car, that the front of the car is the same width or has an even track width, I should say, from center, and your rear track width has the same distance off of center. Mine was not that close. Even though I had done the string alignment, and it felt okay driving down the road, it turned out one side of the car was longer than the other side of the car, and the one corner stuck out more than another corner. So it's just worthwhile to go and get that done and get your car set up properly so you have a great base to work with. And then finally, the last thing I would suggest is if, like me, you modified the engine at all, if it's not stock, you put in a cam or any kind of parts, I would suggest taking your car to a dyno, to a tuner, and have it properly tuned, not just for max power, but for max drivability. And that will make the biggest difference to the joy of taking your car out and driving it around. If it sucks to drive your car, you're not going to want to drive it. So it is worth the time and effort to find a good shop, to find a good tuner, and to put in the effort to make your car as enjoyable as possible. You've already seen in the video I posted before, I took the Blunicorn and got it tuned at Black Tracks here in the Bay Area. I cannot speak highly enough of Jay, who's tuned more than one of my cars, and he's fantastic to work with. I will always take my cars to him. I cannot give the guy high enough praise. He's just generally a great human being, and the guys at his shop are wonderful companions. So huge shout out to the guys over at Black Tracks, Jay and everyone. If you see this, huge thumbs up, huge thanks. You guys bust ass. Like, I can't thank you enough. All right, I think that'll do it for this one. This is kind of another long video, but I tried to make it as informative as I could. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and post them down in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them as many as I can as I see them. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.